Hi, I'm Anna and welcome to Art Club for March. This month we're going to be doing a little bit of Gustav Klimt, who painted a wonderful painting called The Tree of Life. And that is what we're going to be having a go at this month. As you can see, this is what we're going to be doing. So you will need some paint, poster paint, gouache, watercolour, something like that. A sheet of paper, it doesn't have to be yellow, I'll explain why in a minute. Pens, pencils, rubbers, and we are good to go. Let's get cracking. So this is the inspiration for this this month's art club. This is The Tree of Life by Gustav Klimt. It's not the best picture in the world. I'm quite sure the original looks amazing, but it's the idea that it just looks like a doodle that appeals to me. His drawings have lots of circles, they have lots of interesting shapes in them, and loads and loads of little details that are really fun to pull out. So we're going to be making our own version of that today. I am using a piece of cream coloured, you could call it card, it's thin card, so that's what I'm going to be using today, and it is just the first thing I picked up. You could use white paper perfectly well. In fact, it might be a bit easier, but I've decided to just mix it up a little bit today. So I'm going to be using this funny coloured paper, but also some gouache paint, gouache, however you want to say it. These are like watercolour, but they are opaque. So what that means is you can't see through them. So if I want to put a pink over the top of that, I'll be able to see it as still a pink. Poster paint would work really well, or you could use white paper and watercolours. It really doesn't matter. I just thought I'd break these out for a change. So I have plopped some into a little palette here, and I'm going to start drawing. Now, we've all had that day when we're sitting in class and we're doing nothing and we're just having a little doodle, aren't we? So the doodle, I feel that the drawings are all about, Klimt's tree is all about that doodle. He's just started in this kind of, there are twirls. I'm going to draw slightly harder than perhaps I would do normally, purely because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing, as always. But you can see how the spirals just kind of happen quite easily. The tricky bit with this is making sure that if you've gone up a branch, so for example this is a branch here, so if I've made that a branch, I now need to make the other side of the branch. So you can see that that's going to need to come out here, but because this is the pencil there, it doesn't really matter. So it's absolutely fine to just draw on almost like a whole load of swirls where you'd quite like them to be. I'm going to have quite a low shaped tree, quite a triangular tree, and then I'll kind of work out how this is all going to fit together. So that will be that one there. If you're the sort of person who used to spend a lot of time in classrooms doing this, this is going to work out very well for you, because I did spend a lot of time in school drawing spirals around things. Let me make that one come out. That one's going out in a different direction. Never mind. So it needs to come round here. As I say, because this is pencil at this stage, it really doesn't matter, providing you kind of work out where those joins are going to be, or where those branches are going to be rather. And then when you put in the ink, it's just a case of actually remembering what you want to leave in and what you want to take out. So I'm going to have one branch. I'm going to have a branch that goes around like this. So I have one spiral there. So let's have a think about this. This might take a little bit of time, but that's fine. Leave some space as well, because what you're going to want to do is put animals and things in this. And if you fill up the whole space with twirls, which is quite tempting because it's quite fun, you won't have any space left for the animals. There, so we've got kind of one half of the tree there. We've got a central trunk going up, and it's going to split in two, roughly. So I've got one branch, that branch there where that spiral is going to come around there in the middle. Maybe another tiny one there with a little branch off it. be one little twirl off there, and then there'll be two on there and one there. Does it balance? Does it balance? Not quite again. Fuss pot. I do like things to balance. That's better. And then I think this needs another. This could go on for some time while I just keep expanding it outwards. But I don't want to do too much of this, because what I want to do is think about where my birds and things are going to be. Now, I've got a nice space here, so I could have a little owl. They're going to be quite cartoony birds, because frankly, I haven't got all the time in the world to go and find perfect bird pictures. So I'm going to have little birds there. I might have a little cluster of... He often puts flowers on things like that. So I think that's quite a nice... We're going to completely steal that device. Little bundles of flowers almost, just so it looks a bit springy. I also quite like how he does his leaves. Now, you don't have to do this. You could do your leaves anyhow you like, but what he's done is quite a... I'll show you. So so what he does is he puts little triangles on like that. Don't know if that's visible. Is that visible? Little triangles along the leaves. And you could do that, or you could do, for example, that sort of shape, just to give a hint of leaves. It's almost like the idea of a leaf without having to commit to it actually being an actual leaf. What else have we got? We've got little branches with those, and we've got mushrooms in the tree, it looks like, that he's used. I don't think I'm going to go for mushrooms. That might be a step too far. But I think these little flowers are nice, so I'm going to put in a few more of those. I have a few more little birds. Where should we put a bird? Bird up here. Bird here. Bird with a long plumy tail. Small bird. And I think a bird... Yeah, I have a bird here as well. And that can be another plumy tail one. There. Okay, so I've got some birds going on. Leaf-wise, I think actually, although I quite like how he draws his leaves, I'm going to go for these, just in places where there are kind of gaps. Just a few, because I think it will be rather... It will just add a sort of, yes, this is definitely a tree and not just a doodle to it. So I'm just going to carry on putting in a few more of these, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink it first. And the reason I'm going to do that, or am I? Am I going to ink it? Yes, I am, because I'm going to ink it, and the reason I'm going to ink it first is because I want to rub out all the lines. And if I paint it first and then try and rub out the lines, that's going to be quite tricky. So ink it is, with your ink, just before I go quiet and get on with it. This is just a fineliner pen. It's a 0.8, which means it's 0.8 of a millimetre wide. The nib is very, very small, so it will allow you to get that level of detail that you want. And I'm just going to ink it in. I'm not going to be particularly precious about this because we're just having a bit of fun. And when it's done, we will start chucking some paint on it. Right, the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed that I did actually mess up one of the spirals, but we will hide that with paint in a minute. When you are drawing in the spirals, don't do what I just did. If you go in on one side of the spiral, so let's say I go in on the outside of the spiral like this, when you get to the middle, just stop. Then when you come in from the other side, come in on the same line from the other side, and it's much more obvious where you need to go. Don't go in and round and back out again, because you might go the wrong way. That is a much so. Go in from one, go in from the other. And then you're much less likely to do what I've just done, which I did despite knowing that would happen. Never mind. It wouldn't be one of my normal videos if I hadn't made a slight blunder somewhere. Right, okay, I think we're good to go now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry for a moment, rub out all the pencil lines, then we're ready to slap some paint on. Okie dokie, here we go. So we've got a nice clean surface now. And I've got some, for me, fairly small brushes because there's quite a lot of fiddly detail on this. I'm not going to put anything in the background because I'm not sure it needs it on this one. But if you wanted, if you had a white one and you did want to do a colour on the background, I'd get a big brush, watch it all on beforehand, and then you can kind of just paint over the top if you're using these particular types of paint. So let's have a think about this trunk. I'm going to go for a warm brown sort of colour, and you'll see what I mean about the paints. I'm going to put the trunk on first, and I'm going to make it quite a lot of different colours because that is kind of how he liked to roll. There is no rule about how you do this really. It really is just personal preference. I'm going to go right over the edge of the paper. The nice thing about gouache is how lovely and thick and buttery it is. So if you haven't experimented with it, I would give it a go. I'm going to just paint in the big bits of the trunk here in sort of, he uses a lot of shapes, squares and other things in his painting. I'm going to use a few of those. I want to make this little, I've got an owl house in the middle of mine. I am going to paint that, so I'm going to paint that in. Could use a thinner brush. This would be easier. This isn't the smallest brush in the world, it has to be said. But I am going to switch out for a smaller one as I get further up the trunk because I know that I will not be able to paint that neatly. So on his painting, he often has bits like this on trunks, and that's quite fun. I mean, this is the sort of thing you could actually spend quite a lot of time doing, to be quite honest. If I had all the time in the world, which I never do, I would be playing with this. Whoops, that went everywhere. Do you know what? I am going to switch out for another brush because that is too big. This might look the same size, but it's got a really good point on it, so it's going to be a little bit easier to manage. Gouache paint, if you are unfamiliar with it, it needs to be sort of the consistency of, well, it depends what you want to use it for, but ideally you want it about the consistency of milky, well, cream, thin cream. We'll ignore that bit where I've just gone over. I'll put some leaves or something there. I'll just paint it in, changing brown as I go because I don't want to stick to all the same colour. I'm not going to worry about going over lines because the lines are really there just as a guide. There are certainly no lines on the painting. If you go over something, the nice thing about this is you can just paint clean over the top. It won't be bothered at all. And get some more warm browns going on here. So I'm just mixing in paint as I go. Lots of different browns. I could paint the stripes on afterwards, actually, that might be easier. It's going to take me quite a long time to do this, I think, because I'm not usually this careful with paint, am I? Let's face it. It's usually kind of fling it all over the place job, but I think of this as a more meditative type of painting. An opportunity to add interesting things to your tree trunks. I quite like how that's drying already. I'm just going to do one branch so you can see what I'm talking about. And then I will do that magic sped up here's one we prepared earlier trick. Otherwise you are literally watching paint dry, and who needs that in their life? What you could do also, if you didn't want to do a pen outline, if you got it all absolutely right in pencil, you could just put the paint in and then rub the pencil out once you've completely finished, if you're not putting anything else on it. So we've got a little bit of branch there. I'm going to make that a bit thicker just so that we can't see that I smushed it. There, you would never know. And show you a leaf. And I get on with the painting. This was meant to be a 10-minute job. It's going to take me the whole afternoon to paint this, isn't it? Still, think of the lovely meditative benefits. It's quite good to get kind of lost in your head in a painting once in a while, isn't it? Some nice green little. Should have made it springy. I could have had a really lemony green. I could still have a lemony green. Look, there we go. These paints I'm using today are Winsor & Newton's gouache paints, but you can pick them up relatively inexpensively. There are plenty of makes. You can see how the colours just really start to sort of dance about. And these flowers, these little roundy flowers, they're very highly stylised flowers. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use some down here. We're going to go for some nice and paint right over. I've put little dots in the centre of something. I'm going to go right over, because I will be able to paint over the top of that. Thank goodness. This is a terrible brush. Why did I pick such a terrible brush? I literally pulled the first brush I could find out of my quiver. It is awful. Switch it out for another one. Let's try this one. This is a tiny brush. You will never see me using a brush like this normally. Oh god, it's even more horrible than the last one. Why are they all so nasty? Let's try that one. This is going to be 2 hours of me changing brush every 5 minutes. That's better. I like a big brush with a point on it. Once the point's gone, it is literally pointless. There. So what I can do, this is actually drying quite fast, so I can show you if I want to put a yellow blob of paint in the centre of that. I kind of can now. Pop. There we go. So I'll carry on painting for about 3 hours, and you can watch the sped up version. Okay, so we've got most of the flowers on, we've got the leaves on, a little bit of fun for the birds, I think. What kind of birds are we going to have? What's going to really stick out? Orange? Like an orange bird. Let's see if I can mix something with these, something really, that's quite funky. be a little bit careful with this because I'm going to probably paint their eyes back over the top. They're just going to vanish a little bit in the... These two, these are a pair of birds, obviously, because they match. Got any more of those? No, I've got two pairs of birds like that, and I've got a little owl, so we will do those birds quite yellow. Though yellow is not really the greatest colour because it isn't anywhere else on the picture, so I might just regret this. I've made them slightly the same colour as the tree. The owl, let's see if I can mix up something a little bit blue. We'll sort him out in a minute once that dries a bit. I've got to put in the centre of the flowers, and then I will do that in a bit. But now sort of comes the time where we can put in some of the greens in the bottom. So I've got grass shapes here. Let's see if I've got some nice pale greens too. Very sort of abstract shapes here. And you can paint them carefully, or you could paint them recklessly, it doesn't matter too much. I'm going to get a bit of colour going on basically, because I want it to be clear that this is ground rather than anything else. So, put a bit more red, some red triangles. Grass, flowers, etc., etc. And then we can put in a little bit of gold, because gold is quite a big feature in pictures like this. And last month we were doing Art Deco. This is kind of Art Nouveau, and it was a time of glitter and gilt and shiny things, bling no less, a little bit of bling. And so we can add some of that in over the top, just in places, doesn't have to be everywhere. Anywhere we feel it might want a little pop of interest, nothing happening here, put a gold bit in. Gold gouache is, even before I bought the gouache paint, the gold was one that I had in my quiver, because it's so useful for those little pops of excitement when you're making a Christmas card, or just when you want to really jazz something up. This is the one. And you can see already it's just bringing a little bit of excitement to the picture. You don't have to, in fact, don't go mad with it, because if you do, what you'll find is it becomes a bit sort of like meh, gold, meh. Whereas as it is, if you just put in little pops, it always makes it slightly more exciting. It's very square, like the square patterns. It's almost like a patchwork tree, really. All the way up. I'm going to sort those birds out, they look a bit dodgy. Okay, what do we think? Quite like that. A bit more gold on there, I think required. You could, if I was feeling really bling, could have done the whole background gold. That would have been quite fun. Let's put a tiny bit around the little owl's house and the owl itself. Maybe also these poor little birds that I slightly ruined. There we go. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. What I can always do. The nice thing about gouache and all these types of water-based mediums is you can come back over with a pen and just tidy things up as you need to. Okay, so I've just got to put the yellows in the centre of the flowers, and then we are pretty much there. So let's grab some yellow. Bop, 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 bop. You can see I'm being incredibly careful now because I've got a lot of wet paint all over this, and you'll have noticed at various points in this video that I was turning the paper a lot. That's really important. If you've got an image like this where you really can't afford to put your elbow through it, keep turning it. Give them gold beaks, why not? Right, now what we need to do is put their little eyes back in. Just reinstate the eyes of the little birds. Put my finger through that. Oh, I haven't done the flowers at the bottom. And I am just going to do those flowers, even though I put my elbow in them about 6 times now. There we go. And there we have it. A tree of life. Well, that's about it for Art Club for this month. I hope you've had fun having a go at this, and if you have, send me a picture. There's so much you could do with this. You could adapt it for an autumn scene, maybe. You could even do an underwater one. How about some coral reef fishes, all that sort of stuff? I would love to see what you do with this, and I've had fun today. I hope you will too, and I will see you back next month for more Art Club. Happy painting!